You're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy Focus.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football, presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. My name is Daniel Dopp, here with my best friend, Mike Clay. Mike, they liked it so much yesterday. They let us do it again. Just a you and me show. What's going on here?
As usual, Field H just not showing up.
Just not showing up for it.
They didn't even put a chair out for him today because they knew he wouldn't be here. So, that's usual.
It is
typical of Field. Has shoulder surgery yesterday and can't be here the next day. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save that. We're just going to get right into it. We're going to kick things off very quickly with the opening drive.
There it is.
All right, you mentioned it. I didn't want to spoil it. Field had shoulder surgery. We actually got a tweet from Field, and I was upset. I sent Mike, I sent him a trade in our Dynasty League, hoping that because he was on a bunch of drugs after surgery, he would accept it, and he didn't accept it. I don't understand. But we got this awesome tweet from Field, obviously coming out of surgery. Everything looks to be okay. Rehab should go well for him. We are excited to be able to have him back here next week. But Adam Schefter puts out, ESPN's Field Yates, injured last month in the Bahamas while determining a fantasy draft order, underwent successful surgery today on his torn labrum, per sources. Yates is scheduled to be back on Sunday for FF Now. The road to recovery, Yates texted after his surgery with Dr. Sethi, is on. So there we go.
All right, yeah. I know he's in good spirits because he texted us yesterday to say that he watched the show and it was a good show. And then he followed up and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send this to EBL,
the EBL crew,
ESPN Bet Live." So
yeah,
that's how I knew he was in good spirits and hanging in there. No,
yeah.
But no, it's obviously we're happy. It was successful, and we'll get him back here. So we need him. We need him to carry the load around here.
I did get word from some big ESPN executives up top that yesterday, though, was the most downloaded and watched show all season long. Do you think that Field not being here has anything to do with that? Or?
Definitely connected.
Yeah, I think there's something there, right?
I think that can't be a coincidence. That's just one of those things. You got to follow the numbers. That's what I say.
Follow the numbers, Mike.
Hashtag analytics.
That's right. Numbers never lie, as we have been told before on this program. Really quickly, before we get anything else, I do want to say Liz Lowe's Fact versus Feelings came out yesterday. Go check that out. She is back for a long time here at ESPN Fantasy, and that column is one of the mainstays, as well as wide receiver cornerback, or the Shadow Report. What do we even officially call it? I feel like
Shadow Report. I think we call it the Shadow Report because Tristan has a similarly named article with matchups, something like that. But yeah, it's too bad we don't have Liz here. We set her up on I have a stand at home when I'm watching the games on Sunday next to my computer. It's like a big stand, and I hang a TV on it. We could have put Liz right here since she's not here. Have her around, but there's like a law. Liz and I are only allowed to do a certain amount of shows per year. I think it's in her contract.
Probably.
I can only do one show per year with Mike. That's all I can handle. So I get it. I get it.
That's why all the FF Now segments are with me and not with you.
That's right.
She's not going to be able to do it.
That's right. We're not allowed. I'm sure she was very strict. She's like, number one thing with my new contract. Minimal work with Mike. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That is the opposite in my contract. I feel like I get nothing but Mike Clay everywhere.
You have to carry the load because she won't do it. No one else will do it. So
we're going to talk about the Shadow Report as we get into the show. Why don't we kick things off with a little Thursday Night Football preview, Mike? We got Dolphins. We got Bills. This should be another fun one here. This AFC.
The second and third best teams in the AFC.
That's right. Yeah,
the Jets.
Jets are technically the best team.
Bounce back week coming. They're the only 0-1 team in the division, but not for long, my friends.
Not for long. Well, let's talk about the big thing for me coming into this game. It's the Dolphins running backs.
Yeah.
We got no Raheem Mostert. We got that word yesterday. Breaking news in the middle of our Wednesday rankings show. Go check that out in case you want to listen to some of the rankings that we have heading into week 2. Big question for me, if Devon Achane rolls, we're still rolling with him as a top 7 running back in this one. So there's not a lot for me around Devon Achane. It's really what you do with the rest of those guys. If Achane does go, is Jeff Wright worth a potential low-end flex play for you, or is he too far down that ranking?
I love that you combine them into one because we don't know. Jeff Wright, Jeff Wilson,
Jalen
sorry,
Wright. I said Jalen.
It's okay. Same initials, and we don't know, right? That's going to be the backfield if Achane's out. I'm with you. If Achane goes with Mostert out, he's going to be featured to the extent he can be. He's not fully healthy, so it's going to be a risky play. It's just one of them things. You're going to have to start him, but he could have a setback on the 5th snap and be done. But it's going to be a tough one. He's an interesting one. He didn't run well last week, but neither did Mostert. But he was a big factor in the passing game, so you got to hope that continues against the Bills, who, by the way, struggled against James Conner. So this could be potentially a plus matchup. Remember, a lot different Bills defense than we've seen in years past. And no Matt Milano, a linebacker. There's a reasons to think that that defense can be had this season. We talked about this yesterday. The immediate gut reaction when Mostert and Achane were dicey for this game was Jalen Wright time.
Yep.
And that might be true. However, Jalen Wright was a healthy scratch in week 1. Jeff Wilson was not. In fact, he got some run throughout that game. They gave him an occasional touch, an occasional work there, and he's been successful in the past with San Francisco and Miami. So I think it's possible that if Achane is out, Wilson is the lead back, but Wright is going to play a lot. We know they're going to use multiple backs. So it's a tough call. I like Jalen Wright a lot. He was one of my top running backs in this class. He has excellent speed, much like the other running backs there, but he also has some good size to him as well, and loved his efficiency at the college level. So really fascinating situation. Based on what they told us in week 1, I feel like a little edge to Jeff Wilson because he's probably more likely to get touches, and I'm going to chase touches. But it's a toss-up. I think basically you're looking at both of them as flex options.
Yeah, I think that if Devon Achane doesn't go, I would have Jeff Wilson probably inside, right around my top 30. I can't get him inside the top 25. He's going to be lower than that for me. But you never know how it's going to work in this backfield. That's part of the fear is how much are they going to potentially unlock Jalen Wright if Achane doesn't go.
And what if Wright's not there, because he's not ready yet, and it's kind of like San Francisco last week where the rookie Guerrero, they didn't use him, right? He played a couple snaps as the number 2, and Jordan Mason had 30-some carries and 1 target in that game. We'll get to him shortly, but what if they do that with Wilson and they're like he gets 18 carries and a handful of targets in this game and Wright does nothing? That's a real possibility. I think it's more likely that Wright busts than Wilson busts. Wilson should be safe to have a role in this game.
I agree. Wright should be on benches, though. If he is still available on your waiver
no
wire,
doubt,
I would go out and grab him right now just in case for the future.
And that's why I'm still holding him regardless because and why we drafted him over Wilson, because he has the ceiling to be potentially their lead back with Raheem Mostert at his age already hurt. Devon Achane, again, spent the whole offseason talking about this. We talked at pre-draft last year. We talked about it last year when he was getting hurt. We talked about it this offseason. He is undersized. He's 189 pounds. The likelihood of him being a feature back in Miami this year is pretty low.
Yeah.
They're going to have someone else. And if it's not Mostert, it could be Wright. And maybe Wright's the guy that gets 12 to 14 carries and a few targets in one of the best running games in the NFL. So I agree. It might not happen yet, but he's one of the best insurance backs you could have for your bench.
If that were to happen, I would picture it almost like a little like Detroit Lions running back backfield, where you got like the Montgomery role that's going to go to Jalen Wright. You got the Jahmyr Gibbs role that's going to go to Devon Achane.
A lot of J names.
Yeah, I'm getting them all mixed up here. That's what it is. Let's talk about Bills pass catchers. Because if I'm looking at the Bills pass catchers, after what was a really tough week 1 to decipher because Josh Allen just spread the ball around everywhere, this is how I'm falling with it. I'm still trusting Dalton Kincaid the most. And then for me, it's Keon Coleman, and then it's Khalil Shakir. Do you see it similarly?
I do. Curtis Samuel, I think, will play more as the year goes on. Remember, he was very dicey going into week 1, so he was the number 4 in this game. Based on where he's used on the field, I'm a little concerned about Khalil Shakir and him stealing more work from him. Because Matt Collins, they like to block. They were very run-heavy in that game.
They were.
And that's been a trend ever since they changed coordinators midway through last year. But I'm with you. Look, Dalton Kincaid played 88% of the snaps. Keon Coleman played one more of the pass plays. He played 72% of the snaps, but he was on the field for 27 of 30 pass plays. For Kincaid, it was 26 of 30. That's a featured role with Josh Allen. Those guys, I think, are going to be okay. I feel really good about Coleman. He was their number 1. He was really their number 1 receiver in the opener when they were throwing the football, despite the fact that an underwhelming. I mean, he had 4 catches for 51 yards. That's not bad for an NFL debut in a game where they did not run that many first-half plays. So I'm with you. I believe in Kincaid still should be a starter, and Coleman's the only receiver I would start from this team. He's a flex option.
Agreed with you on that one. All right, let's take a look at our fantasy-focused parlay for Thursday Night Football, Mike Clay. We got a handful. Actually, before we do that, you want to pick this game?
Yeah, who did I pick? I have the Dolphins. Yeah. I think they have a much better defense, and their offense is always really good at the beginning of the season for sure. We'll see if they tail off when it gets cold. But I think Miami is the better team. Of course, I thought that going into last year too, and I was wrong. I mean, I was right until week 18.
Right.
Week 18 is when once it got cold. I was right until it got cold, and then Miami let me down big time. I thought they would get over that hump last year because of that defense, but a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff there with Vic and the defense. But anyway, I think Miami's better this year.
I think so too. I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins in this one, so we're going to go 2-0 on that one. All right, now time for our fantasy focus parlay. In case you want to put a little bit of money down on this game, here's what we got for you. Josh Allen, anytime touchdown. If I'm taking a rushing touchdown for the Bills, it's going to be him and not James Cook, Mike. And then why not lean into, with the uncertainty at the running back spot, a couple of these superstar wide receivers, Tyreek Hill anytime touchdown and a Jalen Waddle anytime touchdown. We're hoping a lot of points get scored in this one, Michael Lester Clay. Odds were at 274. They're now at 340.
A little boost there?
Yeah, a little bit of a boost for that one. That's not too bad. Hopefully we get some good plays there in the end zone. Remember, 21 and over. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's dive into our Week 2 preview, Part 1. Rams and Cardinals, Mike Clay. Looking at the Rams and Cardinals, obviously a couple of guys you know for a fact that you're starting in this one. Kyren Williams, definitely still a starter.
Money.
Cooper Kupp, inside our top 3 at the wide receiver position. The big thing and the big takeaway for me is actually nothing from this game yet, although we will talk about it, but it was more so your bold call heading into the season. Mike, I cannot believe that this actually came true. You brought together a bold call doing one of our off-season shows of after week 1. You even had a little newspaper that you had.
Yeah, it was like future headlines. What was that show where the guy used to get the newspaper the day before? So this headline is coming Thursday, September 12th, 2024. So this is, we're like recapping week 1. It's during the week. We're looking back at the transactions from the waiver wire after week 1. And the headline is, Blake Corum was the most dropped player in ESPN fantasy leagues this week after the rookie was outsnapped 53-6. Are you kidding me? By Kyren Williams against Daniel's Detroit Lions in week number 1. Yeah. So, look, tough break for those investing way too much capital. And Blake Corum, I don't know if anyone sitting to my left has done that quite a bit in our mock drafts that we've done.
I wonder who you're talking about.
Yeah, could it be
screen left or actual left? Two differentiating.
This left right here. High five.
Fine.
I'm not getting. I don't think I'm going to get many high fives today.
That's the call right there. You said he was going to be the most dropped player after week 1 against my Detroit Lions, and then guess what happened? He was the most drop player after week 1. How does this happen? We knew that Blake Corum wasn't going to get the majority of the work in this one, but yet still people are like panicking after drafting this rookie somewhere in like the middle rounds of their draft.
Yeah, what's weird is I predicted it was like, and I was kind of joking like the extent of the damage with the snaps. I was like, Kyren outsnaps him like 54-6, and it was like 54-0 was the actual tally because Ronnie Rivers was the number 2. I was having a little fun with Stefania with that for sure. I did not think the gap would be that large, but here we are. So that's what happened. He didn't play. I understand it, why people are dropping him because we need that bench capital after week 1. I honestly thought post week 1 was a little bit of a weak waiver wire, honestly. Yeah. There was Isaiah Likely, but he was rostered in deeper leagues, so there wasn't a lot out there. But anyway, he was when you play 0 snaps, it's a hard guy to keep on your roster. So I still believe that he's in that category of end-of-bench insurance running backs because if something happens to Kyren, it's not going to be Ronnie Rivers getting 20 touches, okay? Right. Corum's going to get a long look. He has more pedigree. You would expect him to, progressively take on a larger share of that workload. So still a fine bench guy, but, I am not surprised at all that Kyren Williams dominated that backfield. It's like we forgot about how good he was last year.
Yeah.
He was awesome. He averaged like 5 yards per carry. He was terrific in fantasy. He did all that damage. He was like running. He wasn't at McCaffrey's level, but he was RB2, and that was with a somewhat limited passing game role. That's how dominant he was on the ground. So I believe in Kyren. I loved him as a prospect. He ran slow at the combine, and that knocked him down. That was a big red flag. But sometimes the exception is not the rule. There's exceptions to the rules.
Yes.
He's the exception to the rule.
Exception.
He's been awesome. He has shown that his efficiency at Notre Dame is legit. And I'm all in on Kyren. I'm glad the Corum hype happened because I got Kyren at a discount so many times in the offseason, so I'm riding high through week 1.
I still think, and you had mentioned this, if Blake Corum is available on any of my waiver wires now after this first drop period, I'm looking at the end of my bench, especially if I've got more wide receivers than what I need. Who can I drop as a potential, like you said, nice running back insurance heading into the middle?
Yeah, 12-team leagues for sure. 10-teamers, I feel like I look at my 10-team benches, I'm like, benches are strong. Like, I have some good talent. I'm like, Terry McLaurin and
What is
No, I mean, look, receivers so deep. You must have like a good, like a Cooper or McLaurin, like guys like that on your bench.
Yep.
Because 10-team leagues are what they are. So, 10-teamers, I don't think he's a must. 12-teamers, I think he's certainly a viable end-of-bench player.
All right, so let's talk about the pass catchers in this one, because that's really the question. Outside of Cooper Kupp,
Oh, yeah.
this team runs, it feels like a bajillion 3 wide receiver sets.
So let me give you a stat for that. They are the only team that had 3 receivers on the field for every single play in week 1.
There we go. So now my question for you is, coming out of that, I know where I'm going to land on this one. I'll let you know why. But
Yeah.
Demarcus Robinson, who was the guy that we kind of thought was going to be the number 3 in this offense coming into it, or Tyler Johnson, who had a nice breakout here in week 1, taking on my Detroit Lions?
Yeah, so I have a slight lean towards Robinson, but despite the fact that Robinson played 92% of the snaps in week 1 compared to 66% for Tyler Johnson, because remember, Nacua played about a quarter before he went on IR. He still outproduced him with 5 for 79. So it was 4 for 42 for Robinson, 5 for 79 through the air for Tyler Johnson. This is a really good matchup. Arizona has some question marks at perimeter corner right now. So actually at all the corner positions, they struggled against the slot in week 1 too, which is great for Cooper Kupp.
Yes, it is.
That's part of why he's ranked so high for us here in week number 2. But slight lean towards Robinson. I don't know if you agree with me, but it's close. Either way, they're both deep league flexes.
Yeah, weeks 13 through 17 last season, this is what Demarcus Robinson did. 15.5 fantasy points, 13.6 fantasy points, 14.7, 20.2, and 13.2. He was wide receiver 19 over those 5 games, and that was still with Puka, who was wide receiver 4, and Cooper Kupp, who was a top 10 guy. So all 3 of them were top 20. There's enough balls to go around in this offense that if I had to lean one direction or the other, I think Demarcus Robinson is probably more of the floor play as the wide receiver 2 there, and Tyler Johnson with that big playability, maybe more of a ceiling play, but I would default to Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, I like Tyler Johnson as a prospect too. Sometimes those late flyers, late pick / undrafted guys take a few years to get going. But there was some hype around him. Like he earned that 4 job. He was the perimeter backup to a guy like Nacua. And he's shown that in that game. He showed it. He looked pretty good. So there's some sleeper appeal here.
How about on the other side of this one, Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah,
obviously brutal week 1. We talked about him a little bit yesterday, but we still have him as a very clear-cut set it and forget it starter heading into week 2. Let's just tell the people why there's no reason to panic.
Yeah, he played 90% of the snaps, so he was still on the field. He's a full-time guy. I didn't love the comments from Kyler Murray. I don't think he necessarily.
It's not my job to get him.
Yeah, I mean, kind of is. They took him in the top 5. Like, yeah, it's kind of your job to get him the football. But also it's the play caller's job to design plays to get the football in his hands, and they did a poor job of that. I mean, they had the Bills beat. They're up 17-0, and they blew that game, and they didn't use the 4th overall pick of the draft. I mean, this is not a great roster. I mean, you're going to have to take advantage of those skill guys on offense with Connor, McBride, and Harrison, and they did not do a good job of that in the second half. So we moved him down in our rankings, but still a guy you're going to start and give him another week. If Kyler doesn't throw to him again this week, then we start to ask questions about what's going on.
What's happening here?
Probably coaching-wise at that point. But, again, it's week 1. He was out there. He's running routes. I think he'll be okay.
You taking the Rams? You taking the Cardinals in this one?
Rams.
Yeah.
Rams for sure.
I'm taking the Rams as well. All right. Let's talk about the Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's really one big question. When you look at these 2 teams, obviously you're still starting Amon-Ra, you're still starting Jahmyr Gibbs, you're starting Sam Laporta. And for the other side, obviously Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are good to roll. My question is, and I'm going to let you start this one, Mike Clay.
Okay.
Are you still in on Jameson Williams being a potential flex play after what was a big week 1?
Absolutely. My concern coming into the season was, do they actually trust this guy as an every down player? Because we have seen it 0 times. He has never been an every down player. Not 2 full seasons. He missed most of the first year, but he was barely on the field last year. Had the suspension, but still he was there the rest of the year, and he still was just seeing like 2 targets, 3 targets. So what was the commitment level to him? The commitment level was all in week number 1. Daniel, he played 85% of the snaps. That's by far a career high. He saw 9 targets. That's 2 more than his prior career high, and he's only been above 5, I think once before. He had 7 that one random game last year. 9 targets, 5 catches, $121, a touchdown, and a 13-yard carry in the opener. So I feel great. He doesn't have other competition. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be on the field. I know he's a little. I think he's missing a little limited. I want to say in practice. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I don't know how you put this guy on your bench after what we saw in week 1 and how good this offense was. I will say this, the Bucs allowed the fewest fantasy points to receivers in week 1. but they were playing Jaden Daniels, and he had 16 carries and ran the ball a ton, scored 2 rushing touchdowns. So not too worried about that secondary. Got to play him.
Secondary is super banged up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They lost a bunch of their starters. No Antoine Winfield in this one either, so it feels like it's a really nice matchup for Detroit pass catchers in this one.
Where do you have him? I have him 33.
I've got Jameson at 32.
So we're close. So we're 10-team leagues. We're calling him a flex end or a fringe wide receiver 3.
After what we saw, and listen, I don't expect him to get 9 targets again in this game. They're going to get Amon-Ra and Laporta more involved. But we have already seen this with Jameson Williams. He doesn't need 9 targets to be able to still put off a big game based on that upside and that speed that he has. I would love it if he saw that kind of volume, but he doesn't need it.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, if he's getting 6 or 7 a game, he might not be a boom-bust player because he's going to hit for big plays, and generally the boom-bust guys are, the targets are all over the place because of their role, but if they manufacture touches for him and he's getting, a 20% target share, he's going to be fine. He's going to be like Deshaun Jackson where he's a lineup lock every week.
Yeah,
so feeling great about his week 1 usage.
I've got Rashad White a little bit outside. I did talk with you about this yesterday.
Yeah.
I got him just outside my top 20. I actually did move J.K. Dobbins ahead of him. We'll talk about him a little bit later on in the show. But he's the only other guy that I feel like is a conversation here. But you can't not start Rashad White with where you drafted him in draft this year.
Yeah, I still think he'll remain the lead back, but there was the Bucky Irving, the rookie, looked pretty good in week 1. That doesn't always mean a lot because sometimes when you just get a few touches, you have a good run here, good run there, and the numbers look better than they actually are. They trust White, and he was very involved in the passing game. The problem is the matchup against the Lions, who are just terrific against the run. So
then we're hoping the Lions score a lot of points, so then he has to be involved in the passing game a bunch again this week.
Yeah, just like last week. Get him some targets. That's all we need.
Yeah.
We'll be happy.
Who are you taking in this one?
I'm taking the Lions. I'm not as high on the Bucs as most people. I know they had a big week 1. They beat up on a team we think's a bottom 5 team in the NFL. I think they'll be kind of put in their place here against Detroit. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Baker really has turned the corner, but I'm still going big on Lions here.
The Bucs did exactly what you're supposed to do against a not good football team in week 1.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to take the Detroit Lions at home as well. Second straight home game
shocked by this development.
Against the playoff. I mean, these are the 2 teams that the Lions were in the playoffs against last year.
Right.
The Rams and the Bucs. So 2 tough ones to start this one. All right. Chargers and Carolina Panthers. Excuse me. Let's not do that one. Sorry. Let's do Titans.
Titans.
Titans and Jets. How does that sound? I mean, when I'm looking at this, boy, Breece Hall, you can't not start. Garrett Wilson, I guess you also can't not start, but it didn't quite feel as good for Garrett Wilson from a production standpoint, but you did love the target volume that he got.
6 for 60 on a bad day. You'll take it. 11 targets in the game, featured early on. Rodgers is going to look his way, and the game will be more competitive. They didn't show up for that game. I mean, they played the best team in the NFL.
Yes, they did.
In the 49ers on the road in week 1. There was reasons to expect a slow start. I expected better than that, but I think they'll get back on track here against the Titans.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And there's really no one else for the Jets that we would even consider. I don't really want to play Aaron Rodgers if I can help it. There's a lot of other quarterbacks that I would trust over him. Question for me on the other side is the Titans running back situation. Tony Pollard pretty clearly was the lead back last week when you look at everything that he did here. I'm trying to figure out, Mike, 62% of the snaps, 45% for Tajay Spears. So knowing that we just watched Jordan Mason just absolutely eviscerate this run defense, even though I thought, Quinnen Williams, and they've got a bunch of guys there I thought were going to be good. How high are you on this backfield? That's not a full-on committee. It obviously leans Tony Pollard, but how are you approaching both of these guys in week 2?
Well, first of all, they told us that Tony Pollard's the lead back with the usage in that game. It wasn't just, 38 snaps to 27 snaps for Spears doesn't seem that wide. However, if you look at the touches, it's 16 carries for Pollard, 4 for Spears, and then 4 targets for Pollard, 5 for Spears. Pollard actually ran 6 more pass routes, or he was on the field for 6 more pass plays than Spears in the game. Also, Pollard was more productive and scored the lone touchdown between the 2 running backs in the game. So Brian Callahan did say after the game he wants the usage to be closer, and I expect that too. But he didn't say, it's still 50-50 or, Spears is the lead back or anything like that. I think Pollard is pretty clearly the lead rusher here, and maybe Spears ends up getting more passing down work, but I don't know that for sure. So if I'm picking one, I'm picking Pollard. You mentioned probably a good matchup based on what we saw from the Jets' run defense last week, and that kind of checks out. they have Quinn and Williams, who's fantastic. He's one of the best players in the league, but that's it. Their DT depth is not great up there, and obviously their edge rushers are a work in progress. They had no pass rush. I don't know if they're going to be able to slow the run. So Pollard is the preferred flex option here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. When you look at potentially having Calvin Ridley, the only other player I would want to start in this offense, does Sauce Gardner ever shadow cornerbacks, or does he more stay to one side of the field?
Nope. Maybe once a year they'll shadow. It's a very rare circumstance. So Gardner and Reed just play their sides, and that's the expectation in this game. I think we'll see more DeAndre Hopkins this week. He was very limited in that game, more so than we expected. We saw Treylon Burks is really the starter opposite Ridley with Tyler Boyd in the slot. We'll see more Hopkins, but that maybe takes some pressure off Ridley a little bit if they prioritize. They're not worried about Treylon Burks. Maybe they are worried about DeAndre Hopkins a little bit, but Ridley was fine. It was just, he was their leading receiver in that game. They just really struggled. I mean, they did. Jets defense, special teams, positioned for a bounce back after
that.
After what Will Levis delivered last week.
Dude, that pick six that he threw at the very end. Well, I don't know if it was at the very end. It was the end of what I was watching for that.
Yeah. It was basically the end. Yeah.
It made it so difficult. I want to have more excitement in this Titans offense, especially with Will Levis. I want to see him air it out more, utilize the big money wide receiver that they just spent. I want Calvin Ridley. I want to feel more confidence in having him as a flex play. I'm just curious to figure out what it's going to be. So I still am starting him as a flex, but I don't, I'm lowering expectations until I see more of what this Titans offense can really
I don't think they're going to be great, so they'll be throwing a lot. That's good for Calvin Ridley, for sure. But, it's funny. Will Levis came out, and he looked okay at the beginning, and he was running, too. And I was like, here we go. Like, that deep sleeper appeal of Will Levis is here, and then it just all fell apart in the second half. Super disappointing, but we'll see if they can get it on track. Good luck against the Jets. Yeah. They're underwhelmed in week 1, but it's like, do you even count games against the Niners like Kyle Shanahan? Like, it's not even fair. Like, it's just not fair. That guy, it's like every time they run a play, somebody's just wide open. Yeah. I don't know how he does it, but that guy, I mean, is he the best coach right now? Like,
he schemes so well, and I think that there's at least a consideration for him. I mean, it helps that he's got a bunch of great guys all over the place. I mean, his offensive line is really good. He's got 2 unbelievable wide receivers.
I'm with you, but, like, CMC was out. And that was, like, supposedly the thing that unlocked the offense. They didn't miss a single beat.
Not a beat.
They didn't even throw to Mason in that game. They just distributed targets elsewhere. It doesn't matter. He just gets guys open, and they crush it. So that guy is just on another level. And their O-line is, Trent Williams missed all that time. They have major question marks everywhere on that O-line since the start of last year. It does not matter. It just doesn't affect them. The Jets had no pass rush. Unreal.
If I'm him, how long are you keeping? I mean, I realize this is all hypothetical, but, like, there's no reason, given what we're expecting for this team, like the expectations for the 49ers is not just a playoff berth, but you're pushing for a Super Bowl. There's no reason to push CMC to be able to come back any earlier than when he is 100% ready, especially after what we saw with Jordan Mason. So
exactly right. I'm with you. I just don't know why you would when you're getting that much out of your run game. It just doesn't seem to matter. It's like them getting CMC was almost unnecessary for Shanahan. It's just the rich get richer.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. This is not meant to be a 49ers conversation. However, just talking about that Jets.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that.
Maybe we should have saved that for Stefania tomorrow. She would have enjoyed that. Don't let her see this.
Yeah. Don't. Yeah. She won't see it anyways. All right. Who are you taking in this one? They or the Titans?
Oh, you know where I'm going.
Gotta go
Jets aren't going to lose for a while.
Think so.
Yeah. Win streak time. Schedule lightens up now. They certainly have a top 10 schedule going forward. Their hardest game of the year was week 1 in San Fran. They're going to get it going now.
All right. Steelers at Broncos. This one is going to be interesting. This is one of those games I don't necessarily feel good starting anybody, Mike, but we got to talk about it at least a little bit. Steelers are going to have, it sounds like, Justin Fields under center again. I'm actually in an interesting spot. I'd love to get your thoughts here.
Okay.
I'm in a league where I got Jordan Love. Jordan Love, unfortunately, not going to play this week.
Although they're like saying maybe he will, but I would say that's an extreme long shot. Maybe next week, though.
Let's say this really quickly, and I don't know how many times we have to say this, but we'll say it as many times as we need to. We do not handle injury designations here at ESPN. The reason why Jordan Love is not listed as out is because the team has not listed him as out yet for this week.
That's very simple.
So that's it. We don't go through and make our own designations based on what we think or what beat reporters say. Things change. So when the team officially lists Jordan Love as out, then he will be listed as out. So save all your hate and vitriol for Mike and I and put it somewhere else into the world. We just don't need it. Let's do a little more love, maybe. A little more acceptance?
Yeah, we have a a company, a source that provides those designations. We've talked about this before. They use the team reports, and they are exceptionally good at it. They nail it. They don't make mistakes. So if a person has a D or a questionable, that's because the team has said they're questionable or doubtful, and that includes, of course, Jordan Love. When the team, you see Matt LaFleur says Jordan Love is not playing this week, then he will change that.
And he will change
That's how it works.
So just saying that.
We do not control those.
No, we don't. I've got a league with Jordan Love, and I went out and I picked up Justin Fields because he was available on my waiver wire, someone that I'm hoping to be able to use for this week. But I've got some managers that have sent me a bunch of quarterback trades. I got one, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, for what would have been my number 1 overall pick, Amon-Ra St. Brown. But here's the reason why I don't want to do this, and I want you to talk this through with me. The idea of Jordan Love being hurt for a couple of weeks, it's not like he's going to be gone for a super long amount of time. So rather than make a trade for a quarterback in my league, and now for the rest of the season I've got to decide between those two guys, I'm looking at a player like Justin Fields to get me by for a week or two. And that's kind of when I'm looking at this like quarterback spot. The reason why I'm starting Justin Fields is because he becomes a bye-week fill-in or an injury replacement for me. Would you see it sort of similarly to that situation?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not trading Amon-Ra in that scenario. I don't think like Jaden Daniels sounds like a good acquisition, but not at the cost of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Agreed.
Sure.
And not when I'm supposed to get my quarterback back and I can roll with a guy that right now we have inside the top 12 at quarterback for week 2 with Justin Fields.
Yeah, for the record, I wouldn't even do that if Love was out for the season.
Okay. Good to know. I appreciate that.
I'm not giving up Amon-Ra for that at that price tag. That's way too much. Yeah, look, I believe that Fields can be as you see how we have him ranked, both top 10 this week. Because of his legs, he can be a productive fantasy running back. Week 1, 17 of 23, completed 74% of his passes, was very conservative. Average depth of throw was 6.1 yards, a lot in the short area, but he did connect with George Pickens in tough coverage quite a bit throughout that game. Didn't throw a touchdown, but 14 carries, 57 yards. 10 of those, Daniel, were designed runs. So
love that.
That's good. We like that from a fantasy standpoint. If he had a rushing touchdown, it might be a little bit of a different conversation, a little more optimism out there. But I'm with you. Against Denver, no issue as him as a streamer for the short term.
Yeah, you've got him projected for double-digit carries here in week 2, and part of the way that they utilized him in that offense. What about for the rest of those running backs? So if he's going to get all those those carries at the quarterback spot, when I looked at week 1 usage, like Jaylen Warren, and I want to ask Stefania, obviously a little banged up coming into week 1. Maybe that is why he didn't get as many touches, but it felt like the Najee Harris show. How are you approaching Najee here in week 2?
Yeah, 58% of snaps for Harris, 29% for Warren, who was clearly limited a little bit. But Harris he had 20 carries. That's a lot, obviously. Only 2 targets, 79 yards, 20 yards for Jaylen Warren. So they weren't super productive, and that's going to be a concern. I talked about that on FF Now on Sunday morning when we learned that Russell Wilson was going to play. When Justin Fields is the quarterback, the running backs do not produce in fantasy, and that is definitely a concern and why these guys are ranked a little lower. 24th for Harris for me, 39th for Jaylen Warren, but it is a good matchup. They're playing the Broncos. Ken Walker had very little trouble with them.
Yes.
After a little bit of slow start. He had a slow start last week, and then he just ran over him, and that's a good sign. So that helps a little bit. It's enough to make Harris a 12-team league, RB2, a 10-team league flex option. Warren, I would not trust yet until he's healthy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. What about the other side? Because with the Broncos, I don't feel good about any of this right now. The only hope is that this is more of like a grind-it-out kind of a game because neither team gets out to an early lead. So if it's not a shootout, I could hope that Javonte Williams gets more involved. But after last week, it's tough for me to be able to feel a lot of confidence in Javonte Williams.
Yeah, let's talk about what they did last week because it was Javonte that was leading in snaps, right? He played 36. Jaleel McLaughlin played 24 snaps. And then Audric Estime.
Yes.
Got that now?
Crushed it, Mike.
Only played a few, had a couple carries. He's on IR, so he's out. Blake Watson probably will be up this week. The undrafted rookies, the pass catchers generated some hype. Deep sleeper, dynasty sleeper to keep an eye on, especially with the uncertainty here. But here's the thing. Despite the fact that Williams played more snaps, he had 8 carries for 23 yards and 2 targets for 0 yards. McLaughlin, 10 carries, 27 yards, 5 targets he got them all, but only had 1 yard. So they had one
just for 1 yard.
Yeah, they had 1 combined receiving yard on 7 targets. Neither ran well. McLaughlin had more usage in both the running game and the passing game. It's concerning. It's concerning for sure. I think that based on the snaps, you stick with Javonte here, but you don't have to start either one. I have where do I have Williams? 31st.
31
is where I have Javonte. So And again, they're going to get up against Pittsburgh. It's a really good defense.
Really tough defense.
I don't feel great about it right now. Hopefully, it was just a 1 week thing, and they get going here in week 2. I will say this: Seattle, who they faced last week, arguably the best defensive tackle room in the NFL. I mean, they are stacked up front. I mean, they were loaded already, and then they drafted Byron Murphy. I mean, they're in a great spot up front. So I will say that maybe that was part of the problem with Denver's running backs in week 1.
Yeah, I'm with you on the running back and the way that you're approaching it, because if I was going to pick one, it would be Jameson Williams, but I've got both of these guys outside my top 30, so if there's any other way that I can start any other running back, that's really what I'm doing here. And I don't want to use any of them in the flex. I'd rather, at this point, I don't see the upside for them in this game. I'd rather roll with a wide receiver that I likely have on my bench, if I can help it in this one. Let's pick this game. Steelers and Broncos. Even though it's in Denver, I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, me too. I'm not super high in Denver this year either. That was one that scared me because Sean Payton's a really good coach, obviously, but just wasn't feeling the roster there. And I'm not sure Bo Nix did enough in week 1 to make me think he's going to be a year like a CJ Stroud, like year 1, just carry that team on his back. Might take a while. So I'm going Steelers.
Yeah, I'm nervous about that. I've got to start Bo Nix in one of my super flex leagues where Jordan Love also is one of my quarterbacks there.
Always love streaming rookie quarterbacks against a defense like the Steelers.
Exactly.
TJ Watt on the other side. That's great. That's a great plan.
Feels a lot of confidence there. Don't love that. All right, let's talk about Falcons and Eagles. A couple of birds in this one. Are you a birder? You do bird watching at all?
No, I'm not a birder. Sometimes if I stand at my sink, I could see the yard, and there's a lot of nature out there. But there's a bird. I saw there was, what do you call them, like little, like the little
hummingbird,
chipmunk or something. No, the little chipmunks that are on the ground.
Oh yeah,
like they're like not
tiny.
Squirrels, but they're like the little things. Are they chipmunks? I think
yeah.
they're chipmunks. But they dug a hole like at the bottom of the steps there, and they would live there. And I'd see them popping out while I'm doing the dishes. I could see them looking around. One time I'm standing there, and the girls are right next to me, and a giant bird, I don't know, it's a hawk or a vulture or something, swooped down and tried to grab him. And it was just one of them shocking things because it was right in my face.
No way.
And I don't think he got him because they were gone for a while, and I thought he got them, but then I think they were just hiding because then they peeked their head out a couple days later. So I see stuff like that in the yard.
Sure.
That's about it. I'm not. You
don't have any like stuff put up. I got a couple of birds. I mean, this year has been, we got a bunch of dogs, so like my birding took a little bit of a back seat, but like I love being able to see. No one cares about this, but I love being able to look.
So you're hot. You're a birder. You collect cards,
trading cards.
Trading cards. What else you got?
I'm a big dork, basically, is what we're gonna get to.
Are you into submarines yet? Like,
no, but my wife Rosie loves submarine movies. They're like some of her favorite movies in the world. So for what it's worth,
yeah, you're in your 40s. Yep.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No, that's all right.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. The skill guys with the Falcons.
Okay.
You're trusting Bijan. Not only are we trusting Bijan, but he might be our running back 1 for the week. I mean, everything that you saw out of him, there is no more of a split here. There is no more fear of that. There are some fears still in this offense, but not for Bijan Robinson because he is the clear-cut number 1 guy. Tyler Algier is totally just an insurance option at this point.
Yeah, 90% of the snaps to Robinson in week number 1. Again, it felt a little underwhelming because his efficiency wasn't through the roof. But Daniel, it's 68 yards rushing and 43 yards receiving, so well over 100 yards. And again, it just feels like he's not there yet.
Nope.
He's not
There's
at
still
that
more.
level where he's scoring a touchdown almost every week and just has these big explosive plays. But it feels like it's coming at some point. So I'm again, they were playing Pittsburgh last week. It was a really tough matchup. They get the Eagles this week, not a defense that you're super intimidated by right now. So I expect him to have a good game.
That's crazy. How is that? How did the Eagles have so many big names that they should be playing on defense, and it just doesn't feel like you're as nervous about them as you should?
It's just not as good on paper as it's been in years past. They've had some misses. Now they have some youth in the secondary. Fletcher Cox retired, so they have 2 young defensive tackles. So they're just still kind of developing.
Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are.
Well, Davis hasn't really been. He hasn't moved the needle a ton just yet. But they're still developing him. Linebacker's been a problem. Zach Bond looked terrific last week, so we'll see. I mean, they're, I'd say, trending up, but remember how awful they were last year. It's hard not to trend up from what they were doing last year. And Vic Fangio's there. Maybe they get going, but on paper, I would say average at best on paper.
All right, we talked about it yesterday on the show. You can go back and listen to this, but if in case you were at all worried about Drake London, we still have him as a top 15 option this week. I understand the fears. I get the trepidation on being able to figure out, man, it felt like this was just a continuation of 2023 all over again, but that's not going to happen. Team came out and said that they were disappointed with the way that they utilized him. I still expect Drake London to be able to get on track in this one.
Yeah, Joey Porter shadowed him in that game. Like we talked about this last week. It was like it's a hard guy to bench because much like George Pickens on the other side of the game, it's hard to bench because he could definitely get to 80 yards even in a bad game because he's so good. But yeah, Joey Porter is one of the best corners in the NFL, and he shut him down. So Darius Slay maybe shadows London in this game, but honestly, at this point in Slay's career, not super concerned about it. Yeah. I think he still has something left in the tank, but I'm not sure he's not a shutdown corner at this point. So
not like he used to.
I think you start him with confidence.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, so what about Kyle Pitts? I mean, given that same secondary and that linebacking core, do you think Kyle Pitts can find some value here?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we had more than 3 targets last week. We talked about this yesterday, but he did score a touchdown, and most importantly, they ran 50 offensive plays, which, by the way, another part of the problem last year is they only ran 50 snaps. Normally, you're going to run into 60, so not, that's something to consider when you're
volume. But again, it was a tough defense. You're talking last year or week?
No, last week.
Okay.
Last week, they only ran 50 snaps. Generally, they'll be in the 60s. So that's a lot of plays, a lot of opportunities. That's part of why Pitts only had 3 targets. But he did score a touchdown, and most importantly, he was on the field for 48 of those 50 snaps, 96%. So that's great. If he keeps that up, he will be a tight end 1 this year.
Yeah, it was so frustrating if you had Kyle Pitts because you were just seeing him stand there in the corner of the end zone. It was like, please, Kirk Cousins, see him wide open and just throw him the football. So I was very glad.
For the record, I think, we talked about him earlier, Marvin Harrison. I think it was the same thing at the end of that game.
Oh, running down the side.
Again, it would be a different conversation. The dude was wide open, and maybe that's Kyler should have thrown it to him on that one. He was supposed to throw it to him on that one.
Maybe it was his responsibility there.
What did he say is his job? It was his job to throw it to him on that play.
Yeah, that's a tough one. For the Eagles, you're starting all the normal guys. Is there anyone outside of like our normal Eagles that you're starting this week? Jalen Hurts, obviously. Saquon Barkley, obviously. And then both the wide receivers. Dallas Goedert, with the way the tight end position
borderline.
was. Yeah, he was a freak guy.
He's borderline. I mean, he might be a fill-in for like an Njoku. I've seen some trade offers out there with Goddard. He's like, wasn't really drafted as a 1 in 12 in 10-team league, so maybe he's a guy you can get. But he's kind of one of them fringe guys. But no, I think that's it. Devontae Smith playing in the slot is going to be huge this year. He's going to have such a big season like that. I think he was in the slot 70-some% of the time in that opener. It's a new role for him, so really excited about that.
To see what that's going to be. All right, picking this game, can I assume you're going to take the Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm taking the Eagles there. Yeah, they're the favorites for a reason. I think it'll be closer. I think they're like 6.5-point favorites, which surprised me a little. I have more confidence in that in the Falcons. I think it'll be closer, but Philly wins.
I feel a little nervous because we've picked all of the same teams in this one. I feel like sooner or later you and I are going to have to differentiate.
I think I only got like 2 wrong in week 1, so we're off to a good start this year.
That's good. All right.
That means you probably did too.
I did all right. I didn't but I don't copy your picks, Mike. You're saying I copy your picks all the time?
Clearly. I mean,
this isn't a red zone.
Well, you should be copying my red zone picks.
Hey now.
Some foreshadowing.
That was a shot. All right. I'm also going to go with the Eagles though. Let's talk Chargers and Panthers. Panthers looked awful, just everywhere on offense, on defense, everywhere across the board. So my big question for you, Mike, coming into this one is, how many of these Chargers can you start against what might be one of the worst defenses in the NFL? Knowing that they also have a bunch of question marks everywhere that they are at on offense, Mike.
You know what? We have a few options here. The Chargers were one of them offenses where we went into week 1 like, ideally, let's not start anyone. But let's just sit back and learn.
Let's see.
Let's see how the receivers are deployed. Let's see what the running back usage is. Let's see how much Justin Herbert gets to throw in an offense, which, if I'm not mistaken, they called a fairly balanced offense, game script adjusted. So that's a good sign. We want that for Justin Herbert. Yep. We don't want them to be like Arthur Smith level or Chicago Bears, Justin Fields level run heavy. And they weren't yet. Now, they're probably going to try to run in this one. They should be able to run against Carolina. And the top benefactor to that, of course, is J.K. Dobbins, who we talked about yesterday. Just terrific in week 1. 32 snaps to 22 for Edwards, 10 carries to actually 11 for Edwards, but J.K. Dobbins 12 routes and 3 targets. Edwards 5 routes and 1 target. We just know he's going to be a non-factor as a pass catcher, and that's great news for J.K. Dobbins. And Dobbins was effective, 139 yards and a touchdown, 13 touches. Check this out. Since J.K. Dobbins was drafted, if you take every running back who has at least 150 carries since that point, he has the highest yards per carry in the NFL at 6.1 yards, which is an incredibly high number. The threshold is at 150 because Devon Achane is messing it up.
Okay, that's fair.
But if he didn't count and you rose it, you would just see that Dobbins on his usage at this efficiency level, unsustainable long term, but just shows how effective he is. So I'm pretty pumped for him. I have him RB22, and Carolina, of course, got sliced up by the Saints running backs last week, 35 fantasy points. So Dobbins in a great week 2 spot.
Yeah, Panthers gave up 180 yards on the ground, 3rd most in the league in week 1. So this feels like another great spot. I have J.K. Dobbins just inside my top 20. On the other side, or not on the other side, same team, but now talking pass catchers. If there was a pass catcher I was going to trust in this one, it feels to me like we came into the season and it was like Josh Palmer is probably going to be the one. Josh Palmer is going to be the one. But Ladd McConkey is someone that we're really excited about. Ladd McConkey, the guy that actually got into the end zone and scored double-digit fantasy points. Is he the guy that you are trusting if you're starting a wide receiver from this offense?
Yeah, so I do have McConkey 9 spots at 35. The one thing I will say is Palmer at least ran as the number 1. He played 80% of the snaps. It was just 65% for Ladd McConkey.
Okay.
I'd like to see him out there a little bit more, but it was his first NFL game, so it's reasonable to think that I'll play more. We're not really worried about Quentin Johnston. He was out in the field a lot as well. But I think McConkey's going to prove to be the better player. And we saw that in the targets, right? He had 7 in the game, 4 for 5 catches, 39 yards, and a touchdown. Josh Palmer only 4 targets and had 15 yards in the game. So McConkey's the guy I trust most. I think he is the most likely to sustain fantasy value all season long. And having 7 targets in the opener is a really good sign for him.
No, I'm totally with you on that. I think in the other side of this offense, or the other side of this game, excuse me, if I cannot start anyone from the Carolina Panthers, I'm probably at that point, unfortunately. I want Deontay Johnson to be able to be a flex play for me. And if this team is trailing, then ideally he's the guy that I would trust the most. But are you approaching any of these Panthers as flex options in week 2?
I'll stick with Deontay Johnson as a flex. I mean, I have him 37th.
37. That's a low
I have him.
flex.
Yeah, he's a flex option. I will say this. He rested throughout a chunk of this game. So he still had 6 targets. It was only 19 yards. It was ugly. He ran around on their first 21 pass plays. So he was in every single down player. That is a good sign. It's as expected. But then he sat out a lot because they were getting crushed and they just rested guys. So that's good. And he did have 6 targets despite the limited game. Not super worried about the Chargers secondary in this one or their defense. It's so tough because I can't imagine they're going to be this bad. I mean, Bryce Young throwing Adam Thielen last year was fine.
Yes.
The efficiency was average. It was the other guys that he had trouble with. So I'm hoping this is just for new coaching staff, new scheme, a lot of new skill guys. Maybe it's just Saints defense has been pretty good under Dennis Allen. Maybe it was just a really rough start to the season, and now they'll get back on track. So maybe a bounce-back game. I still think Johnson's a fine flex.
Yeah, I am a little nervous if this team is going to be this bad, and we're going to hope that it's not, that all of the hero RB Chuba Hubbard shares that I have are just not going to be worth what I need them to be worth, because he was difficult. I mean, these running backs just in general were difficult in week 1, and if we're talking kind of like we did with Derrick Henry, negative game script, and you're talking about that, I know that Hubbard can be a decent pass catcher, but it just feels like there's such low volume of opportunities here in this offense with how bad Carolina was in week 1. So. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, Hubbard was the lead back as expected. Plenty of Miles Sanders mixed in, but I don't know. I don't have him ranked high either. I mean, we definitely have to be concerned. Everyone just kind of ranked the Panthers as an easy like that. They're going to be awful again. Bryce Young wasn't good enough, like that kind of thing. I thought on paper they were a little better than that. Now, you losing Derek Brown is massive.
Yeah, brutal.
I mean, he is their best player. Losing him on defense is going to crush that. But I mean, it's good for fantasy because we can pick on them all year long. But I definitely expected a little bit more from the offense. But there's still time here, okay? It's week 1. I feel like Baker Mayfield last year in this scheme got better as the year went on in Tampa. Of course, their play caller then, now the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. So maybe it's just progressive improvement as the year goes on.
Yeah. So J.K. Dobbins and Ladd McConkey, 2 guys that we have the most confidence in on the other side. If you're starting anyone from the Panthers, it is Deontay Johnson. Let's pick this game. You taking the Chargers or the Panthers?
Yeah, Chargers. Gotta be the Chargers.
I'm going to take the Chargers as well. All right, we got one more I'm going to throw at you really quickly, Mike.
All right.
New England and the Seahawks.
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about the New England Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson's the only guy that I'm looking at in this one. I don't think that there's any of the pass catchers that I'm going to start, even with Jacoby Brissett under center. And Brissett actually looked pretty good in week 1 for all the things that he needed to be. But Pop Douglas didn't really do it. Jalen Polk didn't do it for me. It's really the Ramondre Stevenson show. And I would trust him as a low-end RB2 in this one. How about you?
Yeah, there's nothing like a wide receiver room where they're using a lot of guys, and it's just confusing even how they use them. It's a receiver by committee, and there's no good one. So if you look at the snap, I won't read the numbers of the snaps, but they're all very close. But the order, it was K.J. Osborne, then Douglas, Pop Douglas, then Tyquan Thornton, then Jalen Polk. They were all between 35 and 39, okay? But they were in that order.
Okay.
Then if you look at pass routes, Douglas and Thornton were first with 18. The Polk had 15. Osborne was last. So he was first in snaps, but last in routes. So he was out there, when they were running the football. Osborne's the only one that had more than 3 targets, but he only had 6, and none of them got to 30 yards in the game. So it's just a mess. You don't want any of these guys. I still think Pop Douglas and Jalen Polk are the most likely to emerge throughout the season as the 1-2 punch. Those are the guys I'd want on my bench, but I would avoid if possible.
Yeah. On the other side, we're talking about Ken Walker. He's going to be an RB2 for us as well. No, he got banged up a little bit. We'll hear from Stefania, make sure he's okay on Friday.
Zach Charbonnet, if he's out there in shallow leagues on waivers, scoop him up just in case Walker's out. He's an easy plug-and-play RB2.
Are we going to get a Christian Gonzalez shadow on DK Metcalf this week?
Yep, we sure are. He shadowed in week 1. I would expect him to travel with Metcalf in this game. So not as tough as Surtain last week, but it's still a tough matchup here for Metcalf.
Right, so we were in on JSN being the guy. Hopefully they got unlocked with that shadow last week. Instead, it was Tyler Lockett that was that guy. Are you still in? If you were to rank these wide receivers, obviously DK Metcalf, even with that Christian Gonzalez shadow, is going to be the wide receiver we trust most. Which one of these other pass catchers would you have the most confidence in?
Yeah, so the gap is closer, a little closer than where I had it last week. But Smith and Jigba 43, Lockett 47. Lockett was better and had more targets, but the snaps told a different story. JSN played 80% of the snaps. It was 52% for Lockett. The gap was closer in terms of routes run, but still was an edge to JSN. He seems like he's the number 2. So he'll have better games moving forward. He is the preferred choice, but again, hard to trust him off a 19-yard, 2-target week 1. So I think they're both flex options in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, in really deep leagues if you need it. Ideally, though, I only want to figure out if I can play DK Metcalf. And I'm lowering expectations a little bit based on that shadow and Ken Walker from this one. If you're taking one of these teams, I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks.
I'm taking Seattle. Again, I like them. I want the Seahawks to happen. They were my first team out in the NFC playoffs. I feel like there's a lot of kind of under-the-radar things to like about that team. But they got to find a way to get these receivers going. That's one of your strengths of the roster.
They really do.
Got to make JSN happen.
Yeah. Let's make JSN be a thing this year, please. Like, that's one of the guys that I feel like that second-year leap that we're looking forward to, especially with what was Mike, I talked about this coming into the offseason. Like, I was so pumped about Ryan Grubb coming in to be the offensive coordinator with everything he did in Washington in college and the way that his offenses were so high-flying. All the passing yards, the idea that this could be another step for Geno Smith and all 3 of these wide receivers. And then week 1, it was just a little bit of a letdown. So I don't want to feel like, all right, I'm not in on this offense anymore. I'm still there. But at least in week 2 against what was a scrappy and gritty Patriots defense in week 1 against the Chicago Bears, I'm still wanting to trust them, but I've lowered expectations here until I see it.
I'm keeping an eye on Noah Fant, too. I had a league where I'm kind of in a desperate spot at tight end. One of them I lost in Njoku, and I went Parkinson, speaking of the Seattle, former Seattle, now on the Rams. But another one, I was just, like, in big trouble. Like, during the draft, like, something I'll do is I'm not going to force a position if there's value on the board. If a guy's just falling, I'm going to grab him. I don't care what position it is. I'll sort the roster out throughout the season. But at tight end in this league, I ended up with Cole Kmet. Again, very late. He was plummeting, and he's kind of useless now because I don't even know if we've talked about this, but I don't know if you guys got to this on Monday or Tuesday, but he played behind Gerald Everett.
No.
And that was signaled to us in the preseason, but we were still like, that doesn't make sense. No way. But he did. He's the number 2 or the 1B at tight end, which is hard to believe behind Gerald Everett, but it is what it is. So he's useless. Luke Musgrave was buried as a number 2 in Green Bay, and now, of course, there's no – I wanted to like Tucker Kraft, but with no Jordan Love, I'm not going to use him.
Not doing that.
And then I think my other I can't remember what my third one was. Maybe it was Chig Okonkwo, I think.
Okay.
He was fine. He scored a touchdown, but still was splitting snaps. So I picked up Noah Fant because he did run almost all the routes for Seattle in that opener. So maybe there's some hope for him in this new scheme to get going. We'll see if that happens moving forward. There were a lot of tight ends that ran a lot of routes, but just were useless in fantasy. It was just a a poor start to the season for that position, and maybe defenses adjust and then tight ends get going here in week number 2. We'll see.
You know, speaking of tight ends, just coming off of waivers, I always, every once in a while, I like to go through and see, like, hey, I know I put in a waiver bid, especially in my fab leagues. Like, I put in a bid to be able to see if I could get this guy, and I go to look, hey, was I super close to getting him? Was I way off with my pricing? Isaiah Likely.
All over the map.
All over the board. Thank you, because he was all over the board at my leagues as well.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I had one league where someone put in a $50 bid on him and used half of their fab to be able to get Isaiah Likely. Another league, he went for $15, and it's just like...
I got him for 10 in one of our leagues. Focus or FF Now.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, one of those two. I have Bowers. Who's my starter? I have a good starter.
In the Focus League?
I don't even know. I have a good starter. I have Brock Bowers, and now I have Likely. So I got to trade one. Anyone need a tight end?
Tight end?
Well, he's that.
I got Dalton.
That's a 10-teamer, right? That Focus League.
Yeah. Now I want to see, what is it that you did here, Mike? Because that would be a good question. Do I need a tight end?
I like that team. I like my teams in those leagues.
I'm good to go.
How do you have?
I got Trey McBride.
That's the problem with 10-team leagues. So I did scan this morning. I was scanning through the rosters, and I'm like, someone's got to need a tight end. And, like, I think Liz had Njoku. She has Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
And tight end is still pretty strong, like, at least for now.
Yep.
Like, we're not panicking really on any of the starters yet. So, I don't know. I'm just going to sit there and enjoy all my tight ends.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at for week 1. Coming out of week 1, what was a super disappointing week 1 for the tight end position.
Yeah.
But I'm very glad that you saw it the same way that I did, because having Isaiah Likely be all over the map, that's one of the things that's the hardest every time I do waivers, is figuring out how much is the right amount to bid. Because you don't want to overbid and just uselessly spend money you don't need to, but you also don't want to, like, try and get cheap and then you don't get the guy that you want.
And I don't know if there was, in most leagues, a league winner on waivers. Like, Jordan Mason was on the end of a lot of benches already because he was the number 2 when Eli Mitchell went in IR. And CMC's going to come back, and he's going to be not startable. Isaiah Likely, I don't know if he's a league winner. I mean, he might be a back-end tight end 1. I don't know if there's no Puka Nacua out there.
No.
I don't think.
I feel like
Tyler Johnson is a guy I picked up in a couple leagues. That's a short-term solution. And I'm probably not going to start him. He's a guy that's not better than, guys I'm in my starting lineup. So I don't know. I just felt like waivers was a little weak for post-week 1 this year.
I don't want to be negative about it, but it feels like if you told me at the end of the season that week 1 was Isaiah Likely's best game of the year, I probably wouldn't be shocked. I mean, 9 for 111 and a touchdown for the number 2 or 3 pass catcher in that offense, because we still expect him to be behind, say, Flowers and Mark Andrews. I wouldn't be surprised about that, but there is so much possibility there as well. If anything did happen to Andrews, it feels like he would immediately be basically a top 5 tight end across the board.
No doubt about it. And he did score a lot of touchdowns down the stretch last season, so there's probably that element of trust now. And he's going to play. He's going to be out there when it's basically him or Nelson Aguilar when they're throwing the football on the field. So you know who they're going to pick there now. I mean, it's going to be Isaiah Likely.
Yes.
And Lamar obviously likes him. I have him projected for like an 18% target share. Andrews is like 21, 22, a little edge. So Andrews is ranked a little higher. 5 straight years as a top 5 tight end. I still think he gets it done. But there is room there for Likely to also be a top 10 tight end. Again, it rarely happens, but it does happen sometimes, and this is a situation where it could work.
While we're talking about waivers, and we'll wrap up after this, if you did grab Jordan Mason and you didn't really need him, but someone's got to get him, are you going to hold on to him because of what he could potentially be long-term, or are you going to reach out to the CMC manager and try and maybe facilitate a trade of like, hey, you want a good hand or a good backup or insurance guy? Let's see if we could work something out. What would your approach be?
I would definitely try to see if that owner is really still worried and see if we could pull that off when it seems like CMC's coming back. Just because if you can get a good starter and upgrade your starting lineup, that's more important. But he's definitely on that list of end-to-bench guys. I mean, you know what he is? He's going to be a top 5. Where do you have him ranked this week?
I have him like 8th. 15. No, I'm at 12 this week. So
I'm close. I scaled down his carries, of course. He had an absurd amount of carries.
Touches,
but added a little bit back in targets because he only had 1. They had like a 3% running back target share in that game, that doesn't happen. Like they were up after the first. Actually, the Jets were up in the first quarter, but once they took the lead, they controlled that.
Yeah,
and just ran the ball. So then math there works out to another big game for Jordan Mason. I think he's an RB1.
Yeah. Week 1 waivers is always just like a roller coaster of trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. And that's where you oftentimes can get really good value. You're finding the guy that hopefully can help you out the rest of the season, but you also could spend a bunch of money on a guy that gives you 3 weeks worth of production, and then he's now just a bench guy.
Yeah, but there's some years there's that guy. There's Nacua. There's like you
Tyron Williams.
go all in, and get this guy. I mean, Kyron was drafted in a lot of leagues right late. I mean, I feel like he wasn't as available on waivers, whereas Nacua was out there on a lot.
Everywhere.
In season-long leagues. So that's a potential league winner. I just don't know who that would be in week 1. The guy you would spend on is likely. You would take a chance on him, but I don't know if he has that quite that ceiling.
League.
No one came out, like, say Troy Franklin in Denver came out and he was active and had 9 targets.
Or Puka goes down and Tyler Johnson clear in a way, like becomes a guy that's like, man, I can't.
I mean, if he was like a first-round rookie or second-round rookie or something maybe, but I don't know.
Puka wasn't a first or second-round rookie. Wasn't he a fifth-round?
He was a fifth-round pick, yeah. But I mean, Tyler Johnson's been around for a few years, right? So you're like, he's been around. He's been cut. Is that a guy that's going to be a league winner? And Nacua will be back.
That's the thing.
But Nacua came out as a rookie. There was hype in the offseason. They rested him with the starters, and then he came out and had that huge week 1. Massive. And then you're like, this is a guy that can be, he's a gem. Like, this could be a league-winning player. I just don't know that we had one of them this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. Thanks for talking week 1 waivers with me, Mike.
Yeah.
Fun show. Thank you so much for watching Fantasy Focus Football presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. Mike and I are going to be back tomorrow with Stephania Bell. Make sure we are set up for all of the injury analysis we need heading into setting our lineups for week 2 for what it is. My name is Daniel. His name is Michael. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Make sure all of these guys are out of the flex spot if you can help it. Save your flex spot for later on in the week. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010.